So Michelle, a little over a year ago, I made one of another of my many crazy announcements on the show that this was going to be the hashtag Year of Lin. And we've done pretty much that. We've had multiple episodes speaking about Lin-Manuel Miranda multiple times. He may or may not be joining us tonight. Spoiler alert, probably not, but that's okay. One of the things I proclaimed on that same day when I just proclaimed it would be the Year of Lin, that it was going to finish up in July of 2025 with a Hamilton Extravaganza, right? Yes. So, well, we're nearing the end of July. We need to get that Hamilton Extravaganza in. So that's what we're doing tonight.
And you're so right. You've been very consistent with your Year of Lin and all the information you've shared. I think we all feel so much more knowledgeable and closer to Lin-Manuel Miranda. And very much looking forward to tonight's recording with this extravaganza that you've compiled for everybody.
Well, we'll see if it's a real extravaganza, but either way, it's going to be a fun night of talking Hamilton. And you know, the reason we're doing this is because it's the 10-year anniversary-ish. Matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, it'll be the official 10-year anniversary show of Hamilton on Broadway. And it's also, this month is the 5-year anniversary of Hamilton on Disney Plus. And then when it decided it was going to be on Disney Plus, well, the first people we reached out to were our great friends, Keenan and Rachael, formerly of Part of Our World podcast. And we got them on our show, and we did a show on our show where we did like a Hamilton 101. If you're looking for that, that's episode 108 of the Hyperion Adventures podcast. Yes. And then we went on their show and did a deep dive into Hamilton. If you want to look at for that show, it is episode 53 of the Part of Our World podcast, which you can still find out there. They're not making new shows right now. Maybe we'll inspire them tonight, but not right now. But you still can find it. And they're great shows. And they were the first people we reached out to when we decided we were going to do this Hamilton Extravaganza because of that fact, because we had so much fun with them and they're such great friends. So welcome back to the Hyperion Adventures podcast, Keenan and Rachael, formerly of Part of Our World podcast. Hey guys.
Hello.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
So good to have you back on this show. And just, you know, we are all Hamilton aficionados, and we had so much fun 5 years ago. How was it 5 years ago? Speaking with you about it. And we just couldn't wait to get you back on talking about Hamilton.
We are honored.
And even though we haven't podcasted in a long time, you reached out and asked if we wanted to be on the show, and I did not want to throw away my shot.
Very good. Well, and it's so amazing, the information and knowledge that you bring about this subject. So we definitely needed to make sure that you were involved in this extravaganza.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I was just listening back to those shows. I hadn't listened to them and probably since just after they came out. And I'm like, wow, you know what? We did a pretty good job of breaking down Hamilton between our two shows during that episode. I'm like, you know what we could do? We just package them and re-release that as our Hyperion Hamilton Extravaganza. And we could be done. It would be good. But then I thought, you know what? There was only one thing missing from that Hamilton discussion that we had back 5 years ago. It was that theater feel, that New York feel, and that meant we needed to reach out to our favorite New York friends, Frank and Jen Dillo from Dillo's Diz. Plus, we're recording this on a theme park Thursday, so of course we need to bring them on the show for this Hamilton Extravaganza as well, right?
All the pieces come together.
Now, for the first time ever, it's possible that Tom and Michelle will eject guests off their podcast. And I'm going to explain why. Because, yes, we have the theater experience. Yes, we're New Yorkers. Yes, we've attended live performances connected to the show. Yes, we've had backstage tours of touring productions. But Jen and I both have never seen the show on stage from beginning to end. You
That's
can
it. You're gone. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
guys. It was good to see you.
Frank and Jen, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight.
It was fun while it lasted.
We deserve it. We deserve it.
I know you haven't seen the show live, but I also know that you guys are Hamilton fans. I've heard you discuss it. I know
Yes.
you are. And
Yeah.
part of this is that the fact that it is on Disney Plus, and I know you've both experienced it in that way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, we have a lot to offer here. That's why we're here. We promise.
We're certain of that.
But it's all I
We're
kept
certain.
thinking, like, do they know we haven't seen it? I hope we're a bunch of frauds from New York.
I have to admit, I wasn't sure. I had a feeling you had not gone and seen the show live. I mean, it's easier, I think, for us to go see them when they're touring, as opposed to trying to get actual Broadway tickets. It's more difficult, but just the same, we know you're fans. And I think, Jen, didn't you get a little touch of Hamilton just today, as a matter of fact?
I sure did. I had to go for the content. I mean, I couldn't mess this up, but they were doing Broadway in the park in Bryant Park in the city. And I think it was sponsored by 106.7 Light FM, which is Frank's favorite radio station here in New York. It used to be oldies, not anymore, because it's definitely young and hip because we listen to it. So it's not. Anyway, so I was telling Mr. Dillo, who's a huge Hamilton fan, and he's like, I don't think I can get out of work. I'm like, well, I think me and the kids are going to go. And then I'm telling the kids, I'm like, big adventure into the city today. Let's go. So we did go in. Now, I will say that I thought it was all Hamilton, and it was not, but that was okay too, because we got to see some tidbits of the other shows. But I was happy to be there because they did Schuyler Sisters and they did You'll Be Back. And then I'm forgetting his name now, the representative from 106.7 came out, and he's talking about Lin a little bit. And I'm like, oh my God, please come out. Please, Lin, please come out in this moment. This is all and that was my fear. If I don't go and I'm on social media later and I see Lin jumped up there on stage, I'm going to be so upset. He didn't show up though, but it was still fun to see.
It's because he was preparing for our Hamilton Extravaganza.
Yes, he had a nap to stay up for tonight. That's why.
Absolutely. Well, that's fun. I saw you texted us a video, and it was
That's
like,
great.
and we almost asked. I saw that was happening. I almost reached out to both of you to see if I'm like, oh no, they're going to be busy doing other things. We probably won't go to that. So that was amazing. Great. Yeah. But it couldn't be happier to have you all on to talk Hamilton, because we all love it. In our different ways. Keenan and Rachael, you've seen it live, not on Broadway, but you've seen it live. We've seen it live, not on Broadway, and we've all seen it on Disney Plus and enjoyed it. And it's been amazing. So let's go ahead and start it off. Now we're going to do these a little bit differently than the episodes I talked about earlier, where we did a cross promotion show with Keenan and Rachael. We're kind of going to just more have some fun and talk about what makes Hamilton great, what we love, and why it's cool to celebrate it after 10 years, right, Michelle?
Right. And I think what's great about Hamilton is that it affects and touches people differently, because it does bring together so many emotions and so much story to it, that I do think it's great to hear so many different perspectives. And that's why we're thrilled you all are here tonight.
Yeah. For sure. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. So we're going to do this kind of based on some songs from the show, from the soundtrack, to kind of lead us into some of the different topics we're going to talk about. And then, so if we're going to start off, we need to start off right with the beginning of the show.
Well, the word got around, they said this kid is insane, man. Took up a collection just to send him to the mainland. Get your education, don't forget from whence you came, and the world's gonna know your name. What's your name, man? Alexander Hamilton. My name is Alexander Hamilton, and there's a million things I haven't done, but just you wait, just you wait.
So yes, starts off the show. We learn a lot of exposition, but especially our protagonist, quote unquote, Alexander Hamilton. And that's how I'm going to start this show off, with some of the exposition of how we got into Hamilton. I know some of this was explained on our shows, but 5 years ago, fine. We're going to talk about how we first discovered Hamilton and our first impressions of it. Keenan and Rachel, want to start off with you right off the bat. How did you first discover Hamilton and your early impressions of that show?
So I have a friend who is a big musical theater nerd. Like she knows all of the things, all of the goings on, and she was telling me about this show, and I was kind of like, okay, cool. And, didn't think too much about it. And she just kept talking about it and kept talking about it. And eventually I was like, okay, I'll listen to it. And we just put it on like when I was, doing whatever. I think, so it came out in 2015, right?
Be 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's how it works. So, yeah, I either like just had our oldest or was still pregnant with him or something, but just around the house doing things, preparing and in that new stage. And so I would just have it on. And then I remember Wait For It came on. Because, first I was just like, oh, I couldn't really tell what was going on really, because it was just kind of background noise. But then Wait For It came on. And I was like, oh, like that caught my attention. I was like, I'm going to listen to that again and again. And then I'm like, okay, now I got to go back and listen to the whole thing again. And so then I just, and then you listen to it and you learn about the story. And then, I don't know, I was just hooked after that. And my friend, meanwhile, I would start texting her like, oh, so I looked up this thing about, Alexander Hamilton's earlier life. And she's like, yes, come to the dark side with me. And so we got obsessed pretty quick. And then.
Yeah. I mean, Rachel introduced it to me. I'd heard buzz about there's this show, but I'm not a Broadway guy. And I didn't really think twice about it, but she was like, you have to listen to it. And so she starts playing it around the house. And I got to be honest, I did not like it at first. I was like, this just sounds like bad rap. And just kept hearing it. I was like, yeah, it's just not for me. And I don't remember what song made me want to put it on in my car, but I was playing Hamilton in my car, and I do remember the song that got me completely hooked, and that was One Last Time. And that song came on, and I was just like, whoa, okay, I think there is something deep here. So the rest is history.
And then you've gone to see it a couple times live, right?
Yeah, 2018 maybe.
Couldn't tell you.
I couldn't tell you when we saw it, but we saw one of the first national circuits that they did, and then it came around again. Well, we actually drove up to Cleveland to see it, so for us that's about 2.5 hours away. Then they came to Columbus,
and we saw it with that friend, the friend of mine that introduced it to me, so that was fun. But we were this is kind of sad confession, so desperate to see it that we got tickets, and we were all four of us sitting in separate parts of the theater because we couldn't get tickets together. We could only score single tickets. And so, but then we got to talk oh, how is it from your seat? It was cool.
It's the single rider line into Hamilton. It's all good. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
The second time we got to sit together, so that was
nice.
That's awesome.
Frank, Jen, okay, so how did you come across Hamilton for the first time? And then what were your impressions of the show or the music or however you came across it at first?
You, me, you, him.
Yep, me, you, huh?
Go ahead, you go.
Well, I knew when they were doing their before they hit Broadway, they did a run at the Public Theater, and Mrs. Dillo, she works for Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, and so because Lin-Manuel Miranda was so supportive of the organization, usually when they do the red buckets and hold for collections at the end of performances, they do that twice during the season. They don't usually do it outside of Broadway. There's some offshoot theaters, but at the Public, they did it. And so Mrs. Dillo had gone down to do a bucket shift for the end of the production. So she caught the end, and when she came home, she was like, this is gonna be a thing. It's gonna be a thing. It's gonna be a hit. And I was like, oh, okay. And for me, we had seen Lin-Manuel Miranda in a short run of Sometimes Merrily We Roll Along at the City Center a couple years before. He played Charlie in that, but I kind of knew of his work because I taught theater kids after school in the late 2000s there, when In the Heights hit, and all the kids just would quote In the Heights all the time. So I was at least aware of kind of how he wrote and how he and just how his rhythm was and things like that. So when it finally came to Broadway, you went there to try to get lottery tickets every day because you couldn't do it. So how the street was packed every single day. And so that kind of vibe and that kind of hype and how it brought people together and people so pumped and excited, and they did this whole Ham for Ham thing, and they still do it from time to time where Lin-Manuel would bring out guests. I saw him and Leah Salonga do A Whole New World one night. We never hit the lottery because I still haven't seen it, but many times, several times going there. So for that kind of build up towards probably all the way towards the Tony Awards that year, that was just exciting. And then when the soundtrack finally dropped in October and I could hear it from beginning to end. And I have a lot of friends who like, we don't listen to the soundtrack until we see the show. And I was like, nope, I need to hear the whole thing. And immediately was just impressed with the world, obviously history, but you could feel the world he created around him through the words and the characters and how he developed them.
Yeah.
Nice.
A lot of what you said was like, oh yeah, wait, hold on, let me write that down so I don't forget because some of these things are familiar to me. I think that I was introduced to it by Mr. Snidillo because he would often, like while he was in this office working, be listening to the In the Heights soundtrack, and from there then started hearing about Hamilton, and he would start listening to it. Now I was one of those people who was like, I don't think I want to hear the music before the show. So I kind of stayed away from it. And he was like, no, you have to listen to this. We have to do it. But then once it hit Disney Plus, it was like, okay, yeah. We also tried to do the lottery for years leading up to that and never made it. So we were so excited when it was on Disney Plus. We're like, wait, like this is it? This is the Broadway show? It was so crazy. And once we watched it, hooked, listening to it all the time, watching it multiple times. I mean, because of the time we were in, my son was going into first grade at the time, and he was doing virtual school, and we made him like a Hamilton shirt of Not Throwing Away My Shot, and we had quotes up because they were also singing the songs at that point and all into it. So we were making the tie-in to like get excited for this crazy year of schooling. And I remember driving down to Florida in summer of 2021, and we were playing the soundtrack and listening to it over and over. But I feel like once you watch it or listen to it, you're hooked and you're in. So yeah, I think that's it. But I think it started from listening to In the Heights for Mr. Snidillo, and then him getting me over to the dark side.
Well, Frank and Jen, you bring in the perspective of New York, and you shared the buzz that was going on. I mean, that must have been a unique experience in that here's something big that is getting a lot of attention and being something that was, even though it's about Hamilton, but truly New York. I mean, how did that affect you as well?
Yeah, I think, and it's funny, talk about the buzz and the hype. I didn't see the Phantom of the Opera on Broadway until 3 months before it closed. Like, so when something comes with that much hype, sometimes you're like, I'm going to wait it out. And then you kind of miss these windows. And again, yeah, everyone was doing it. It felt very, in 2015, it just felt like there was an energy to the city, and and Mrs. Dillo saw the original cast, and over the years interact a little bit with cast members and things like that. And Jen and I talk about this a lot. You can tell how the people involved with that show like took that experience and it spreads to other places, I think. And we probably could talk about the performers and the other work they did somewhere along the way. But I feel like there was a natural, like almost like a family vibe. And then how the projects they work on afterwards, and the impact they had in other places. I think that's where you really, to me, that's where you really see it. And for New Yorkers too, whether it was Ariana DeBose hosting the Tonys, or whether, or everything that Leslie Odom has done, everything gets heralded because he's so fantastic. And David, and had the TV series, and obviously Jonathan Groff, who I just saw on in Just in Time you just see whatever came out of there has just continued on in different ways. And so I don't know if that's a direct answer to your question, Michelle, but I just feel like that group was able to spread whatever happened there outward. And I think it does continue, no matter how interesting the arts have been these days.
Yeah, and I do think they built a community, and they kind of helped even just the Broadway community overall, but they brought in probably a bit of a younger audience than some of the other shows were, but to be able to stand in the street and see these performers interacting with each other in, street clothes and singing all different kinds of songs, and everyone's getting into it, and while also waiting to see if they got into the lottery or not. And there's just so much happening. And there are, New York tri-state area touch points too throughout the show that, we can appreciate and go, oh, I know what they're talking about in there. And so, yeah, it definitely built its own kind of community and world. And even Keenan, as you were talking about different songs that kind of hit you, and Rachel too, like that, I think as time went on, you kind of were like, oh, wait, what's this song? Wait, I don't think I've shown this song enough love or paid enough attention to these lyrics before. And now you can kind of get brought back into it. So it's a gift that keeps on giving, I think.
Really is.
Yeah, not to harp on you guys not seeing it live, but I feel like each time we saw it, I came away going, I never had an appreciation for the room where it happens the way that I do now that I've seen it on the stage.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Totally get that.
Well, and that's why it's such a blessing for that to have been added to Disney Plus. The fact that we can see this whenever we want. We don't have to hit the lottery. We can watch it whenever we like.
Mm-hmm.
And it captured a period of time with this amazing cast put together. I mean, this show that won 11 Tony Awards, nominated for 16 of them, and just nearly swept the Tony Awards that year. And, we will get into this discussion later, I'm sure, in some ways didn't change theater, but did alter it at least a little bit, and just incredible. Keenan, Rachel, I want to talk to you. You guys are both teachers. Keenan, I know you specifically have taught classes based on Hamilton, right?
Yeah. So I was American Lit was the class. It was 11th graders. So I haven't taught that since 2019, but we ended the year with a Hamilton unit, and I treated it almost like poetry. Kind of broke it down, studied motifs, plot, characterization, stuff like that, all through the lens of the show. It was awesome, and it was so much fun. I loved digging into it myself, but I also loved sharing it with students, and so many of them, especially initially, you had they're high school kids, so a lot of especially boys would be groaning like, oh, really, we're gonna do a musical? And by the end of it, they're like, that's probably the sweetest thing we've done all year. I had kids crying at the very end, just openly, tears streaming down their face at the end of the show.
I can relate. I can definitely relate. So yeah. Oh, all right, so let's move on here. Next part.
I'm past patiently waiting, I'm passionately smashing every expectation, every action's an act of creation. I'm laughing in the face of casualties of sorrow. For the first time I'm thinking past tomorrow. And I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey yo, I'm just like my country, I'm young, scrappy and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. We gonna rise away.
So we need to talk about just Hamilton being made. I mean, when you look back at it, it's easy to say now, of course, totally makes sense. Why wouldn't you make this musical? But at the time, 10 plus years ago, when Lin-Manuel Miranda goes on vacation with this book from Ron Chernow and decides to first make an individual song based on it, or a poem essentially, and then make an album, and then decide to make this into a musical, a hip hop, R&B, Broadway musical about a founding father that was mostly forgotten. And, we're going to, by the way, cast it with mostly people of color. It seems a little insane, but obviously it's been amazing. I'm curious, Keenan, Rachel, what's your thoughts are on this risk that man, I can't believe I've been saying it for a year and now I'm struggling. Lin-Manuel Miranda took to put this musical together.
I mean, it's Linsanity.
Oh my gosh.
No, in all seriousness, though, it's totally crazy. It's an idea that really shouldn't work, except for Lin-Manuel Miranda as a genius, and he figured out how to make it work. I mean, you could just tell from those early, like I'm sure many of us have seen where he did the presidential performance, and even so early on, it's just like what he's putting into it is totally unique, but also totally him. And we've seen him go on to do other things. He is still evocative of that same style, but nothing I think really captures the like lyrical and rhythmic genius of Lin like Hamilton does. I mean, In the Heights, I think, is like it's the appetizer, but the meal is Hamilton. So it absolutely probably shouldn't have worked, but his 90s hip hop influences and, classically trained Broadway theatrical stuff somehow got married together perfectly.
Yeah, and I think he saw like a lot of himself in Alexander Hamilton, and because of just the way his mind works, and was able to make all of these connections and just like basically, create a symphony out of like just these different people in history and like what that would look like on the stage and things like that. But just, Lin himself being that young, scrappy and hungry guy, and just being able to, I don't want to say make something out of nothing, because, it's history and it happened and it's real and it was, important and, shaped our country and things, but it was like kind of a piece of forgotten history. Like when my friend told me, yeah, it's about Hamilton. And I was like who? Yeah, because now it's like everyone, Hamilton, everyone knows who Alexander Hamilton is now, but he wasn't a topic of conversation, 10 years ago. So you're just kind of like, I don't remember what he did except that he got shot at that duel. By
that guy from the milk commercial.
What?
The Aaron Burr milk commercial.
Sorry.
Same reaction 5 years ago, Rachel. Same reaction.
I don't know. I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah.
Frank, Jen, I'm curious your impressions on that as well, because obviously Hamilton is not Rodgers and Hammerstein. It's not Sondheim. It's, you go through your classic musicals. It's a bit different. I'm curious on your thoughts on this challenge and how they took it on and the success and how it's affected Broadway a little bit.
Well, right. And I mean, I think, to trace it back to like Sondheim, he's like, you got to do risk. You got to take risk. And, I won't call it risks. It was like, everything's got to be a risk, because that's what pushes through. And I think for Broadway too, there hadn't been that kind of excitement since The Producers, maybe, when that hit in 2001. Like, the same level of like insanity that was going on about tickets and getting in and things like that. And so I think it all comes out, to Rachel's point in My Shot, where, that's the I Want song. And you just hear him, come through in that song, and everything about the musical really, and I feel like everything that he went through comes through in that number. So I think it was coming, and it definitely, because, and I only can again speak to it locally, of like how kids were impressed by In the Heights and the impact it made on them. You kind of knew it would come, but it's slow sometimes here, and it was a matter of time, and it hit at the right time, I think, too.
Yeah. I think I tend to live in a world where everyone loves Hamilton, but every once in a while, I think especially being in New York, sometimes you come across other people that love Broadway, and they may love Phantom. And sometimes that audience does not cross over to Hamilton, where there's kind of like they love more of the classic type of Broadway. And this is not that. This is new, cool, and hip, just like all of us. But it's so it definitely doesn't seem like something that would be in the middle of New York City on a stage and bringing in audiences, and it completely works. And Rachel and Keenan, to your points, it is the mind of Lin. I mean, anytime I see interviews with him, or when he's sitting down at the piano, or when I hear songs in like Vivo, or Vivo is what he did, I think it is. Now I'm gonna have to fact check myself. But like just hearing it, like, of course, no, this is Lin. Of course it is, because it's so catchy and it's so, all the songs just stick with you. And it's so cool now to have this representation of a time in history, and like Keenan is, using it as a teaching tool, or did at one point. But it's great to have that, and it's very unique, I think.
So, as Tom was mentioning, and you all kind of reaffirmed that, being Lin taking a shot on this, and how we talk about that the music from this play does touch everybody. And I'm not asking anybody to reveal any deep, dark secrets, but I'm wondering, is this song, can you think of a time in your life where that you connected with that song because of a time in your life where you did take a shot at something that maybe you were a little conscientious or concerned about making a decision, and you decided you didn't want to lose that opportunity?
Let's start with you, Keenan and Rachel.
Okay, so I actually can apply this directly to that song, and I will keep this as brief as possible because it's not an exciting story. But I taught at like a middle school, and it was great school. Did not love teaching 13, 14-year-olds. It was just not a good fit for me. And it was to the point where I was like, do I quit teaching? Like, I'm miserable. And long story short, I decided that I was going to leave the school, and I spent basically 2 years applying for jobs. Nothing. And so finally I'm like, I'm ripping the Band-Aid off. I'm quitting this job, and I'm going to apply and hope for the best. And if I don't get a job by the summer, I'm going to go and teach something else. And that was kind of me taking my shot. And then I got called for an interview with the district that I'm now with. I'm not in that same building, but same district. And on my way to the interview, I listened to My Shot to pump myself up.
Wow, that's awesome.
I
Thanks,
myself,
Jen.
I can't think of
Sorry.
it. I'm more of an Aaron Burr, wait for it type of song. So,
Don't shoot
Totally
me.
get that.
no promises.
Jen, you gonna go first?
Oh, sure. I think I can think of a few, but I think I'll go with probably when I moved to Florida and tried to get a job in Disney. And, after years of kind of debating it, of maybe I'll go to college down there. Okay, I'm not doing that. Maybe I should look into the college program. I don't know. Now I'm getting ready to graduate. Maybe this is my last chance. This is my shot. And making connections and figuring it out and going. To me, like, even looking back, I'm like, how did I do that? How did all of that actually come to be? But it worked. So I think that was probably that for me.
Nice.
I had a theater company, like a theater group, from 2009 to 2011, and at first it started off as very much like structured improv, kind of like almost like a career enthusiasm, where we had the scenes written out and then we'd improv the dialogue. And over time, everyone started contributing, and music became a big part of that. So the first show that we ever did in 2009 became part of this at the time, well-known musical theater festival in Manhattan in 2011. So that was kind of like a 2-year. I'm not throwing away my shot because that is, that was, I could see it. I could see the arc, the trajectory, and I knew we could hit that point. I didn't know what could come after that, and rightfully I couldn't see it, so it didn't happen. But that was something that, probably the most motivated I've been, creatively speaking, over that 2-year period. And and I'll say compare, maybe right now is also is comparable to that, even though I have a full-time job and a family and everything else. I've been working on something that I feel like, I don't think I can throw this away. I gotta figure out how to push through. So and maybe that's why I've been hearing Hamilton more in my head lately too. I don't know. But yeah, that period of time, those 2 years, and you can really, when I see shows like when Hamilton dropped, and that was 4 years, when they debuted on Broadway, and that was 4 years after we did this musical, I see something like that, or I see something like a Hadestown, or something that has that similar vibe to the show, to the stuff we did. Quite honestly, I'm kind of like, oh man, I was onto something then. But I got it to a point, and I couldn't get any further. But I see it where it pays off now, and I go, I know exactly what they went through.
Cool.
You, honey, what about you?
Oh. Ooh.
You didn't think I was going to ask you?
No,
I
didn't. I did not. I think mine was kind of reversed, and I don't think it's I'm sharing anything that I haven't talked about before on on our podcast. But when I was in college and I got pregnant, and I knew the father was not somebody I was going to be with, and I knew that I couldn't provide for a new child, and what that child would lose if I did quit school, because I knew if I quit, I'm not getting back into it. And I knew that things weren't going to be well. And I felt, when I hear this song, I tend to think of that, like it wasn't my shot, it was her shot. I felt like she needed an opportunity, and it kind of helped guide the decision of, putting her up for adoption, which has turned out to be wonderful, because, as it turned out, she and I have connected, and we're close, and it's all good. But at that time, that was something, because my career path, and, was already in motion with school. So what about you?
Well, first of all, yeah, and plus her decision was to not throw away her daughter's shot. She also was a Miss Colorado and was in the Miss America pageant. So yes, it was the right decision on all aspects. But yeah. For me, nothing as good as that. My goodness, I can't follow that. No, this podcast. Michelle thought I was crazy when I started this podcast. Now we couldn't be thrilled 7+ years into it that we decided to do this thing, and have made such amazing friends like you all, and connections, and have just had amazing times and fun, and it's been great. It's been great. And this year of Lin, whether it's successful or not, I can throw in my shot. We gave it a go.
It's been fun.
We'll see if something ever comes out of it. But anyway, a lot of fun. So want to focus on a little bit of the characters from Hamilton over these next few songs. And let's start it this way. So, of course, big aspects of this musical are the female characters within it. There's so many great female characters. You just heard 3 of them there. A couple of them, they play other roles. But, of course, the Schuyler sisters, Angelica, Eliza, Peggy. And Peggy also plays Mariah Reynolds. But great female characters, including one that was part of the ensemble that played the Bullet, that now is just an Academy Award winner on top of that, from that. But just an incredible cast. I'm curious on all of your thoughts on the female characters within this show, and and what an important role they played, both, in the show itself, but also showing strong women in a variety of different portions of this. Rachel, Keenan, I want to hear you first, please.
Well, when I was rewatching, you mentioned Ariana DeBose and in your intro there. But yeah, when I was rewatching it last night, it's cool to kind of see in retrospect, like how and she was obviously super talented. And I think I read somewhere like that she said this was kind of Hamilton would kind of be her last thing that she would accept like an ensemble role for, because she like wanted to, do more main character stuff. And she's amazing and totally makes sense. But to like see her kind of like to go back in time and then see what she would accomplish and like the opportunities that would come for her is really cool, because she is kind of like a background character, and it takes a few watches and it takes some of that like background knowledge of like knowing she's the bullet and like like the different impact that has in the show. What was I saying when we were watching it? And I was like, did you notice like the bullet, how it goes over his head when he's like reading?
He was wearing
and
glasses.
He's wearing his glasses like it would later, But just the importance of her role, like you might not notice it in that first watch or listen. Obviously not listen because you can't see it. So that is one thing that's really
you
cool.
do hear her. You do hear her a couple times in it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, to see how she would go on to be Asha and how she would, star in West Side Story, and yeah, just to see that talent that's almost like in the background, just like to see what she's capable of. So that was the first thing I thought of. And of course, there's so many amazing female characters in the show, and I could go on and on about Eliza, but I'm sure someone will touch on that, and I'll pipe in if needed.
Frank, Jen?
I was thinking Eliza, so feel free to pipe in. I think Eliza is one of those characters that the more you watch, like the more you appreciate, the more you see, the more you notice, the more you think about. I think Burn is one of those songs for me that, after a few times it's like, oh, this song is good. This is just so good. And it's interesting in the show and how they were written and the songs that they do, because you're thinking of a time where women were whatever, they're just there to get married and cook and clean and do all the things, and you have these strong characters who are on point with everything and standing up for themselves and each other, and it's just very cool to see that for a time that isn't as reflective of that typically. But yeah, I mean, Eliza, that's so good. Yeah.
Right, and so I'm now going to be on the Angelica train. No, but the first thing I thought, when you have an ensemble this good, there's got to be all those pieces. And so when you let in Tom, I'm like, the women that sold the show. The show doesn't exist without the women. Like, it's not going to be the same way. Like, that's that is just my instant reaction. I mean, my 9-year-old, she now can do Angelica's run there during Satisfied. She verbatim. She's in the car last week. We're driving out to the East on Long Island, listening to Hamilton, and she's just running through it. And I'm like, do you know all those words? And I like turned on her, and she did it again. I was like, oh man, that is impact right there, and the strength of those roles translates just listening to it. She's seen the Disney Plus version plenty of times, but it comes through in the vocals as well, and I think that's a very big thing. And I was trying to think. I already mentioned her once, but am I going to get on a big Ariana DeBose rant here? But part of, I think, why I haven't seen it on stage yet is because the Disney Plus version is so good. And a big, huge part of that is being able to see Ariana DeBose's performance up close like that. And I'm a big nuancey, detail-y guy like that loves that stuff in theater, and just like, oh, there's all this little behind, underneath things happening. And she is so fantastic in that. And even in that 10th anniversary Tonys, she had that moment. And I'm like, boom, there it is. There's the aura of Ariana DeBose right there. she has so much truth in her eyes and the way she speaks and the way she presents herself. Uh, she's won an Oscar. It's very underrated what she does. She has a way of carrying a performance in herself that is not out there a whole lot right now. And so anything she does, I will watch, because you need the truth here, and you need the truth vocally, and she just holds herself that way. Mrs. Dillo gets very tired of me talking about that. and but it's true, and I get really excited for that kind of performance, whether it's you're playing a lead, whether you're playing your best supporting actress, whether you're silent most of the time playing a bullet. If you can do it in all three of those places, I mean, she carried The Prom on her back on Netflix. I mean, it shows everywhere, and really, I will say, just to bring it back to the Schuyler sisters, yeah, they're the soul of the show, and I have a plan. I've been trying to plan it for about a year to go up to the Schuyler Mansion in upstate New York. It's on my list, because they have a little tour, things like that, and I can't wait to do it.
Nice.
Also, if I could just sing like Renee/Angelica, that would be great. If I could, just a little bit of that would be fantastic. Just some of that talent.
Sliver.
Yeah, exactly.
Take it.
Well, Jen, I kind of want to go back to something you had talked about with Eliza there, and in all the sisters, but especially Eliza, and how there was that subtleness of they're just women, right? But how Lin interjects, like you said, they're so important, they're so pivotal in the show. But even like later on when she's pregnant and Hamilton is kind of confronting her, like, why didn't you tell me? And she said, I talked to Washington. I mean, to have the ear of Washington shows strength, right? And Lin just kind of slides that in. And, and I think that kind of goes along with what you're saying, the strong independence that they're able to carry themselves, as you said.
Yeah. Like, have you heard of this guy, Washington? I talked to him. Does he not get back to you?
Because anybody can,
Speaking a little bit to that moment, I could bring this up a little later, but I want to talk about it now since we're talking about Eliza. One of the things that I was most impressed with the performance on Disney Plus that we got to see of this is, and we've seen it live, but at that moment, Hamilton's coming back, basically being kicked out of his office, kicked out of everything but from Washington, and sent back home. And he's absolutely ruined. He's going back. He's depressed. He comes back. He finds out Eliza's pregnant. He's like, well, why didn't you tell me this? And he's just complete. And the fact that you can just see her working him and lifting his spirits in a way. It's, everything is good. We don't need a legacy. We don't need money. All you need to do is be here with us and everything. And just watching her perform that and create that within him. And then watching also Lin's performance, just seeing his demeanor change throughout that song. It's really super. It's one of my favorite moments from watching the version on Disney Plus. I don't know if any of you have thoughts on that.
No, Jen, when you were talking about like I need to go back and listen to that song, or like when it just hits, that's one of those songs where I just found myself like, a couple years into loving Hamilton, I just like was listening to, why am I blanking on the name of the song? Anyone? No. That Would Be Enough. Yeah. Yeah. And I was just like, it's just, such a beautiful moment. Yeah. And Eliza really is the glue of the show and Hamilton's life. And that goes, that is evident by the ending of the show. Spoiler alert. Past 10 years, that's on you. But yeah, that is one of those songs where I'm just like, she's just so beautifully, I don't know, just cares for him. And you just see like, I don't know how tender she is. And I do feel a little confused sometimes because like, I wonder how she feels about Washington, because I know like, she built the Washington Monument, but it's like also like he's the one that's kind of keeps pulling Hamilton away from the family, and you know, Hamilton with his own Achilles heel of always having to do the thing, and you know, writing like he's running out of time, you know, how he just can't say no to the work, really.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've never looked into that piece of history, like, because I know on one hand she has great respect for Washington, but this is neither here nor there. This is just something I always think about when I watch the show, because I'm like, she wants Hamilton to be with them, but Washington is the one that kind of takes him away for good reason. But
He also wants to go.
I know, but then but then she, you know, raises funds for the Washington Monument or whatever she says in her beautiful ending of the show. Anyways.
I like that thought process.
Yeah,
I've never really
yeah.
thought about that, but that
No,
is
it's
really interesting. I like it. Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and I
It's
feel like in
insightful.
that song too, there's like, you know, she gets it. She gets the work. She gets what he's doing. She understands what Washington's role is, but she's also constantly trying to bring Hamilton like back down to earth of like, this is what matters. Like, stay here. Just, this is all good. We love you no matter what. You don't need to do all of that other stuff. And you're chasing after these things that might not show you the appreciation like we do here. And she's constantly trying to bring that down while also being like, I get it. But also this. Yeah.
Good point.
People always, I think, kind of overlook the fact that Hamilton is a tragedy, like in the traditional sense, you know, and it's such a beautiful love story, but it's a tragic love story, and
Yeah.
it's not central to the plot necessarily, but when you kind of really dig into Hamilton, you see how much it matters to everything in Hamilton's life is his relationship with Liza, and to some extent Angelica as well.
Well, I mean, you can say, talk about a huge spoiler, that his love for Eliza is basically what pivots him from, you know, wanting to always, you know, take his shot to waiting for it at the end more. You know, I mean, that's where, you know, when he loses her for a while and they lose their son, that's kind of where everything flips for him, and also for Burr, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. But that's all about Eliza in so many ways, and how much he loved her, even though obviously there were some issues, and some will say he loved a lot. But he definitely did love Eliza.
Yeah.
So let's move on to our next character here.
Da 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 da. Da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da da da. Everybody.
Da 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 da. Da, 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 da. Come on, Frank, Jen, you guys do it every episode.
Here and there. What do you mean?
We need to talk about the king a little bit, because for one thing, well, Lin said, I remember him saying this, like, it doesn't make any sense that he's in this show, yet somehow he always works. He has the least stage time of any of the main or featured characters in this show, yet you can argue that some of his scenes pack the biggest impact, and they do get the biggest cheers when you go see it live, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the king and the performance, and what you kind of got out of it. Was it all fun, or was there more to it? Keenan Rachael, what are your thoughts?
I don't know if I can answer that specific question, whether there's more to the king or not, but I do know that Jonathan Groff is the reason that the king is as good as he is. And I think I remember seeing somewhere that Lin said he basically wrote that role for him. I could be wrong there. But has anybody seen the clip of Jonathan Groff talking about Beyonce?
No.
I just saw this recently.
I have. Well, him coming backstage at the show. I think
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
He's a huge fan. He's like, basically, like, I worship, the closest thing I have to worship is Beyonce. And I guess she came to a Hamilton performance. And so he ends up meeting her, and there's this after party or whatever. And he's like waiting for his chance to talk to Beyonce. And finally, he works up the courage and he goes and talks to her, and she basically talks about how she studied him on stage and the way he moved and looked and turned and things like that. She's like, I'm stealing that. But she was just kind of in love with the way that he worked himself on stage. And of course, he's just like, oh my gosh, she's so amazing or whatever. The reality is he is so amazing, and the way he brought the king character to life is what made it so, memorable. And yes, when we saw, of course, Jonathan Groff was not the king, and the king was still a really good character, but that actor didn't create this persona that other actors are now embodying. So I don't think that totally answers your question, but Jonathan Groff, that's my answer.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, he's comedic relief for sure. But like some of my favorite songs, and there's always something just so funny in each one of his 3 songs. But I remember I'm still like bitter about it because when I saw it live the first time and we were all sitting separate, I was sitting by this guy who was like the worst person because he was talking during You'll Be Back, and he was like talking to like his date or whatever, saying like, I don't get it. Why is it funny? And I'm like, I'm gonna kill you. I'm pretty dark, but I can't stand for that. So yeah, I don't know what is not to get about
Right.
pure comedic genius, but anyways, yes, I love the king. I love all 3 of his songs, and like there's always a laugh out loud moment, whether that's his sarcastic awesome wow or I'm so blue, and then the stage turning blue.
Country.
Just those like little quips, and I'm a big sarcasm fan, so I just feel like
and you're not going to get all of that if you just listen to it. You totally get the king's character listening to it, but watching it and seeing him on stage, it just really brings that the comedic effect to life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and when he's never going to be president now, and he like comes like roboting through, like, oh, it's so good.
Oh, Keenan, I 100% agree with you. I didn't realize just how funny that was supposed to be, because Jen, I was kind of half you. I didn't want to listen to the whole soundtrack before first seeing it, so I didn't listen to the second act, which I don't think that was in hindsight very smart. But anyways, when I heard that, I thought, oh, that's cute. But seeing it, it's like so hilarious, and it's like that, like you're saying, Keenan, that just doesn't come across unless you see that performance.
I think the story went that Brian Darcy James was doing it down at the Public. It was written originally for Jonathan Groff, I think is correct. And then there was Brian Darcy James had to go and take another gig, and that's how Jonathan Groff. He's like, just want to do it, and he was in. And I had seen Jonathan Groff in Spring Awakening with Lea Michele years before, and then when he became Kristoff, I was like, whoa, they got the guy from Spring Awakening. That's cool. And similar to what everyone is saying is that not until, especially Michelle just say, when you see it, it's a different thing entirely. And as much it's comedic, yet there's still that underlying bit of terror to it that raises the stakes of the show, and that is very difficult to do, I think, in it being so funny, and yet, oh no, I mean, he'll kill everybody, he'll do it. And and to me it's the not exactly the same, but the musical equivalent to Judi Dench in Shakespeare in Love. And very minimal time, she steals everything she does. Everyone is terrified of her because she's Queen Elizabeth, and what is she doing here, and how she feels about theater, and especially all these things. So it's so effective. But yes, Jonathan Groff, just went next level with that role, and everything he touches is pretty much gold at this point.
I think whereas Frank had the Oh, Kristoff, they got the Spring Awakening guy. When I first watched Hamilton, I was like, oh, it's Kristoff. That's crazy. That was a little bit of reverse there. I mean, I agree with all the things, and he has the levity of the show, but also presenting like these real little like this stuff was also going on, and we're just gonna insert it here. Jonathan Groff is amazing. And as you mentioned, Frank and I have used the portion of the song for the last 5 years. And we don't fully understand it at this point. Sometimes we just do it and we're like, I don't know if that one makes sense, but sure, we'll just throw it
I don't know
in
what we're
there.
uncomfortable with right now, but obviously we don't want to talk about something.
Apparently there's something we shouldn't say, so we're just gonna put this in there instead, and it's just been working. I don't know. So yeah, obviously it had a lasting impression for us.
Mhm. It's been a running bit. on
Yeah.
I do
Theme
think
Park
of you,
Thursday with
Jen,
Dillo's Diz.
every time I hear that song now, though.
I was so happy they did the song today. I was like, yes, thank you. A whole crowd singing it. When we were in Jelly Rolls in March for our last time seeing Jelly Rolls players come to life, they did the song and we were like, oh, they're playing it. This is amazing. And we're so excited. So
Yeah, I think we've seen 3 different Kings
Mhm.
live, and then throw in Jonathan Groff on Disney Plus as well. And every one of them is fantastic, and they kill it every single time. It is so good. And I love that the way the King goes from like the first song, he's very arrogant and pompous and what you very kingly and expect. By the second song, he's very frustrated and depressed. And then by the third song, he's a little bit confused. How can Washington leave this? What? And then giddy over who's going to replace him. I love that there's this transition to it. He's only on the stage for something like 13 minutes. But the transition of his character within that, so much so that Jonathan Groff got Tony nominated for 13 minutes on stage. And the actor escapes me, so I apologize. The one who played it on the West End won the Olivier Award for featured actor for that role. I mean, King in Great Britain, it makes sense, I guess. But that's just how much impact this short time they had there for it. So really cool. Let's go ahead. We're running really long. I got to move this thing along.
wrap it up.
Let's get to the next character we need to talk about, or character.
I am the one thing in life I can control. I am inimitable, I am original. I'm not falling behind or running late. I'm not standing still, I am lying wait.
So we can't talk about Hamilton without talking about both Hamilton and Aaron Burr, because their stories run so parallel, and it's such an interesting interplay between the two. And I've said it many times. You change a couple songs, maybe add an extra song. This show could be Burr instead of Hamilton, because that's how important a character is. Keenan, I'm curious. I want to know your impressions of Burr and his role and how important he is, and what your thoughts are on Leslie Odom Jr., for one thing, playing him so magnificently.
Yeah. Rachel had to step out, so it's unfortunate because this is her favorite thing about Hamilton, I think, is Leslie Odom Jr. and Aaron Burr. I think aside from Hamilton, he's the most important character in the play, and he's the most complex character in the play. And you're absolutely right. Like they live kind of parallel lives. Musically, their motifs, there's like weird things that happen where they're like inverses of each other. And his whole thing of wait for it is totally counter to Alexander's not going to throw away my shot. And then at the very end of the play, spoilers, sorry, again, but their roles reverse, right? And Burr takes his shot. He's like, I'm not going to miss this moment. Like, I have to do something about Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton waits for it and doesn't, aim his gun at Burr, and he pays the price for it. And then Burr, obviously says, I'm the villain now in your history. but it's just such an like total like tragic downfall. Like to me, I've compared Hamilton to Shakespeare before, and I think it's largely in part because of the character of Burr and the way that things kind of just unravel for him. And Leslie Odom Jr., phenomenal. We saw him do Christmas songs in concert last year, and I've never seen anyone use their voice as an instrument like he did. I've always seen rock bands and stuff, and they're great, but I was totally blown away by just what he's able to do with his voice.
Frank, Jen, your thoughts?
Again, the parallel is so great. And I'm very much again into I like doppelgangers. I like mirror images. I like when it could have gone if went one way or the other. Like I just like how a protagonist and antagonist, if we're going to call it that in this case, it is set up that way. So that's something I always enjoy seeing on stage or screen or whatever. But I will admit that probably I am drawn to everything else in the show. If I had to put it in order, and I would put Burr at the bottom. And I think it's going to change for me when I see it live. Honestly, I think I'm always watching all these other things that I feel like I need to see that performance in person almost. And I felt that way ever since the Disney Plus version. And he's great always. He was on a show called Person of Interest as a supporting character for one season, and he was really fantastic on there. I think that was the first time I really saw him. So, and obviously he's just amazing in the show. But for the character and the arc and the songs attributed, it hasn't connected to me yet, and I'm hoping that when I finally he's coming, Leslie Odom Jr. is coming back to Broadway in the fall. That's when I'm banking on, everyone. That's when I want to see it. So I'm hoping is when it pushes through finally and kind of hits the way I want it
to. He was also on a show called Gilmore Girls briefly. Okay. So, no, I love Leslie. I like the character of Burr. I like the two sides. I think throughout the show, there are moments where you start to feel bad for him a little bit. Like you feel a little like, oh, well, but you're just doing things a different way. And and things are going this way for you because you're doing something different than Alexander's doing. And when Dear Theodosia, and hearing that song, you're like, oh, there's more there to you. There's more to you than what we're seeing. But obviously at the end, then we don't like you very much. I will say, again, going back to how the songs hit at different times, that a confession of mine is that, wait for it, was not something that stuck out to me initially. And during COVID times, I remember seeing Jordan Fisher sing it on like a TikTok or something. And I was like, what is this song? Wait a second. Wait, what? And because of that, I went back. I was like, this song's amazing. I love it. And like it brought me back into it again. And I think also brought me into the character more. So when I watched it again, then I noticed more and saw more and felt all those mixed feelings depending on the point of the show you're in for him, and which is complicated.
So first of all, Jen, I didn't realize I had emailed you my notes, because that's exactly what I have on here is to talk about how in the song that you really get the sympathetic light, even though Burr is framed as the antagonist. So I'm glad that I guess my email made it to you.
Michelle, we are always on the same page. Come on.
Right,
we always have
right. Our feelings of roller coasters. I mean, come on.
Well, of course.
So all I have to say, that was brilliant that you said that. But
yeah.
I also wanted to interject again, Keenan. I also listened back at the interview you had us on 5 years ago, which really was amazing. You did a great job, and I'm hearing you tonight talk about how this story is, like a tragedy, and you bring up Shakespeare. And there was something else that you said in that show that I thought was very poignant, is that you said the music kind of reminded you of John Williams, in that each character is assigned kind of their own theme song. And I thought that was a really good, comparison as well.
Thanks. Yeah, whoever thought of that, pretty smart. No, I don't know. It is it is how it is, and I love, especially, this is kind of getting away from Burr a little bit, but I love how in certain songs like Nonstop, everybody's out there, and then all those different like musical motifs start overlapping with each other. It's amazing.
And they're using them in discussions with one another. Sometimes Hamilton is firing back at Eliza, or sometimes the Angelica is firing it back at Hamilton, some of his words, some of his songs, back at them. It's fascinating throughout it. I want to go back, wait for it. Interesting. You were talking about that, Jen, and Frank, a little bit, like that the song didn't strike a chord for you. It hit me early. I'm going to tell you why. Is that one of the first things I saw for Hamilton? Of course, we saw the performance on the Tony Awards, but I also went onto YouTube as I was getting ready for us to go see it live for the first time. And they did another thing when they were, I think it was in rehearsals for the Tonys or whatever, where they just had the cast on stage, and it was kind of in a shot or in the round, so you could kind of see everybody there. And it was just Leslie Odom Jr. and the ensemble behind him, and basically an a cappella version of Wait For It. And it was one of the most amazing things I'd ever heard. And I watched it over and over and over again. And so I just had this affinity for that song to begin with. And then I'm watching Burr, and as much as I hate to say it, as much as I would like to say that I'm more like Hamilton, I am way too much like Burr. I am way more of a wait for it guy than going out and taking my shot. That's for sure. So I just I can feel for him sometimes through it. Still the bad guy, still the villain in your history. But I can relate to him a little bit more sometimes, for sure. Let's move on. I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that maybe we've picked out since it's become on Disney Plus.
So what did I miss? What did I miss? Virginia, my home sweet home, I want to give you a kiss. I've been in Paris meeting lots of different ladies. I guess I basically missed the late 80s. I traveled the wide, wide world and came back to this.
So basically, what did we miss? What did we miss when we saw it live? What did we miss when we listened to the soundtrack? And that now that you've been able to watch it on Disney Plus or see it multiple times, what are those moments, those little pieces that have come across? I'm curious, Keenan, because we talked before it came out on Disney Plus. What are your thoughts? Maybe some things that you picked out from watching or rewatching on Disney Plus?
Gosh, you know what? We just watched it yesterday, so you'd think I'd have a lot more to say on this, but you just catch so many details. Rachel already brought up how we were watching yesterday, and Hamilton's wearing his glasses in Act 1 when they do like a flashback to the bullet. But there's just so many cool details, like the turntable in the middle, and just things that even if you're sitting in an audience, when you're seeing it on stage, you're not going to catch a lot of those details. Facial expressions. There were lots of little interactions between the characters. They're still totally in character, kind of doing a little thing, even though they might not be singing. Other stuff is happening on stage, and you see these characters interacting and kind of doing cool stuff. So it just deepens and enriches, I think, the whole experience. Not to be too generic, but that's kind of the biggest takeaway for me.
I know, Frank, Jen, you didn't see it live, but you did listen to the soundtrack. Any thoughts on some of the stuff that's kind of maybe going on behind the scenes or whatever that you picked out?
Well, the one that stands out to me, and again, you think about the big numbers listening to the soundtrack, but and it still sticks with me, the impact that the staging and kind of the character connections a little bit in the story of tonight was really, I overlooked that and ignored it completely listening to the soundtrack. Just it never was something that stuck out listening to it. And now when I listen to the soundtrack and I hear it, I can picture the images. I can look at the staging. I see how they're looking at each other. I see what's in their eyes. And that that really is if that's probably the only thing I can say is that song, watching it on Disney Plus, struck such a chord with me, no pun intended, but that the image is so clear listening to the soundtrack now.
Yeah, I think Keenan and I've also seen, obviously, TikTok, so other things, but to point out all the little behind the scenes things where they are in character, but they're saying things to each other or making each other laugh, or things are happening across the entire stage. So I love seeing all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think you definitely have more of an appreciation when you see it one way or another. I know I'm going to have a greater appreciation once I actually see it live, but I think the songs stay with you even more once you've watched it, and now you can go, being at Bryant Park today, seeing the Schuyler sisters, everyone's snapping when it's time to snap. You guys snap. You can't just let that song go and not snap. There are these big moments that you have to do. And I think, throughout this talk so far, we've pointed out all the things that kind of have gotten us on a rewatch, or something we didn't realize, or something we have more appreciation for. And I think that says so much about the show itself. It's not just something you see once, you're like, oh yeah, that was great. Okay. There you are always learning more and seeing more, noticing a new detail, or finding appreciation for new songs, or whatever it is. And that speaks volumes about the show itself.
Agreed, 100% agreed. And it's funny because even though we had seen it on stage multiple times, it wasn't until it was on Disney Plus, and you, honey, you had pointed out, like, when the lighting on a character turns blue, it's them thinking to themselves, and that's why, like, everybody else is kind of usually stopped in motion or slow motion, and that attention to detail. And then once you realize that and then rewatch it and say, oh, it wasn't just Hamilton, others experienced that, and it really comes through. So yeah, little details missed.
I have so many things. I still pick them out to this day that every time I rewatch, I find something different, because there's so much going on in and around the stage. I mean, yes, the main characters or whatever's going on center stage, you're paying attention to that, but there's so much going on in the background where characters are placed depending on what's happening in the song is important. Things like, go back to Wait For It for a little bit. You see things, and as Burr is singing that song, he's I'm going to wait for it. I'm going to wait for it. And then there's just those little moments where maybe I'm going to do what Hamilton does. And you see, because the ensemble is in chairs around there. And when he does that, they start to get up out of their chair a little bit, like, we're not going to wait for it. And then he goes back to wait for it, and they sit back down into their chairs. Just little subtle things like that. Other things like the only song that's not in the soundtrack, when you learn about John Lawrence dying, and he gets that letter there, and that's given, Eliza's reading it to Alexander. Also at the same time, if you watch up in the rafters, you can see Lafayette and you can see Hercules Mulligan with the same letter walking by, reading it. I never picked that out until probably the fourth time that I rewatched it. It's just some things like that I really love, and they're all over the place. And there's one thing that's not just a subtle background thing, but I just love every time we watch it, is that there's a scene in Helpless where it's the wedding scene, and it's the wedding party walking down there, and they're walking towards the front, and it's Lafayette and Peggy, and he whispers something to her. And this is just that they totally break character for a moment, because she looks at him like, did you just say that to me? And I still, to this day, I just beg, I want to know what he said, because her face is classic. It is so good. And that they kept it in for this big, even though she totally breaks character for that moment, it's awesome. But anyway, they're just those little things I love about the Disney Plus version and rewatching. Rachel, you're back. I want to hear a little bit, because Keenan mentioned, we talked about Burr a little bit ago. I can't move on without hearing a little bit more of your thoughts on Burr and Leslie Odom Jr. as well.
So we're not at what did I miss yet? Because what did I miss?
Okay. No, we are. But
okay. What did I miss?
Going back.
We're going back. Backtracking just for me. Oh, thank you guys.
Rewind.
All of that.
That was good.
Rewind. Aaron Burr's character and Leslie Odom Jr. I don't know. It's almost too much for me to even put into words. But I mean, Leslie Odom Jr. is just such a talent. And did you talk about seeing him live?
I mentioned it.
Yeah, he's extraordinary. And he just brings like that complex character of Burr to life and makes him like a sympathetic character. And in real life, I hear he's, he wasn't as sympathetic, kind of like, not as good of a guy as, Leslie Odom Jr. just, like it makes him out to be, but it's just, there's so many of those, what did you call it? Motifs and different things, the wait for it. And I'm sure I'm not adding anything to what has already been said, but he's just.
Aaron Burr. So I don't want to talk down too much on like the other casts, but Aaron Burr, I feel like, is that character that when we've seen it not on Broadway with the original cast, that we've gone, it's just not as good. It's no Leslie Odom Jr.
Yeah.
Like there was one guy we were kind of joking afterwards that he almost, his approach to the character was almost like, I'm this sinister sort of, I'm gonna get you, Alexander Hamilton. And we were like, like the we compared him to Waluigi from Nintendo, but the old like mustached, villain, Rocky and Bullwinkle. I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
But it was too much. And there's just a subtlety with Leslie Odom Jr.'s Burr that makes you feel for him.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, and like I said, I feel like I am more of a Burr, which makes me concerned about myself sometimes because, and I do think like I wait and then I'll act hastily at just the wrong moment, but yeah, his arc and like the way that he just kind of shifts, like the room where it happens moment where he just kind of, you see him kind of snap in a way where he will do whatever it takes to kind of be in the room and kind of, goes uphill for him in a way, like in, view of his career, but then it all just kind of falls apart because he's only looking out for himself and is just consumed by that rivalry with Hamilton. But yeah, I remember I think we said this maybe on our 5 years ago show where I think Lin-Manuel Miranda tweeted something like, hey, Leslie Odom Jr., I wrote all the best songs for you. Or like, happy birthday, I wrote all the best songs for you, which is like, I agree. Like I said, when I listened to Wait For It for the first time, I was like, oh, okay. And then Room Where It Happens Too. It's just an explosive moment. And
For sure.
Thank you for letting me fawn
Absolutely.
over.
Yeah,
We're
that's
going to
great
not let you
points.
talk
Yeah.
about Aaron Burr, that's for sure, and Leslie Odom Jr. Before we close out, what did I miss? Is there anything, Rachel, that you noticed on Disney Plus that maybe you didn't catch when you saw it live, or maybe listening to the soundtrack that kind of left an impact on you?
I think and I think this goes for most shows when you see them live or see them various times, but seeing just, all the things going on stage. And I was noticing that with My Shot. I mean, and that's just such a fun song, but like you see the guys, Lafayette and Lawrence and Mulligan, just dancing and taking their shots, and just like that whole bar scene, you see Aaron Burr in the back just kind of like waiting for it, or just back there reading his book, and just the different interactions and how, of course, like they're staying in that character, and it's just fun to see. And the choreography is just awesome in that song specifically, but also you just see all those pieces come together. And you're like, oh, I didn't notice like that was going on. Like those two are talking in the background there, like Washington and, Angelica, like have a moment there. And it's just always fun to see. And my favorite choreo is always, or that moment in Rewind when they kind of like they really do like take you there and like do it backwards and with the lighting and stuff. That's always just a cool moment. And yeah, always those little things you pick out and notice when she like puts the letters in the box, and then later in Burn where she's like, I saved every letter you wrote me, and then they're in the box that Peggy puts in, and you know.
Good stuff.
Absolutely.
Great stuff.
Absolutely.
All right, we've gone very long. Let's start getting towards wrapping this up here.
Let me tell you what I wish I'd known when I was young and dreamed of glory. You have no control. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Who tells your story?
So basically, we need to wrap it up by talking about what is the legacy at this point of Hamilton the musical on both Broadway and on Disney Plus. What do you think its impact has been on this world and on you personally? Keenan and Rachel, starting with you, how has it affected you, and how do you think it's affected, again, theater and society in general?
I think I mentioned how I was either pregnant or our oldest had just been born, and remember hearing Dear Theodosia, and that's like that song, and the friend I had mentioned before, like we just talked about, like, oh, it's like kind of like Cedric, or oops, we can say his name, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. And just having, those, you'll come of age with our young nation and stuff like that, and now he's 10 as time works, fast forward 10 years later, and he's now getting into theater, and like he and his little theater friends, like they were all in the playground after this like community theater show they put on. They're all singing Hamilton together and singing songs from the show. The show was not Hamilton. The show was Elf Jr.
Can't do Hamilton.
Yeah, can't do Hamilton yet. But when you can, I'm sure those kids will be all over it, because yeah, it is just affecting the next generation of like these young kids. And yeah, Frank, you're talking about your daughter just being able to do Angelica, and there were some kids at our elementary school talent show doing I think he did My Shot. And so yeah, it is really cool to see how it's reaching these kids who were not even born yet, or who were just born at the inception of the show, just what an impact it has on them. And yeah, I hope that they will be able to nerd out over the nuances and the motifs and like the deeper meanings of those things. Because, right now I think it's like they just like sing along and it's fun and try to get all the words in and stuff like that. But yeah, it's such a amazing piece of art that I'm glad that these kids are kind of getting their toes wet with it. And I think it'll be the gift that keeps on giving, as Jen said.
It's definitely not going anywhere. Disney Plus helps solidify that, but I mean, it's gonna be, an evergreen Broadway play, I think, and not in the sense that it'll always be on Broadway, but in the sense that people will always know. Everybody knows Les Mis. Frank, you mentioned Phantom of the Opera. Like everybody knows, the iconic mask and the organs from Phantom of the Opera. I think Hamilton is going to be in that same echelon of like, everybody, especially young people like us, as Jen mentioned, are growing up with it. And it's always going to be something that people are familiar with, at least in the sense of like mainstream pop culture and potentially Broadway. But I do think it's opened up Broadway musicals in general to a whole audience that probably, like me, would never really have thought too much about it. So it's very, very cool.
I am a huge fan of Broadway and musicals in general. That predates all of this. So anything I'm about to say is not against any of those. It's just different. But I feel like the last 2 decades or so, what is time? Every once in a while you get these shows that are just a little bit different. You had Avenue Q, you had Book of Mormon, you have Hamilton, and I love all 3 of those shows, and I feel like they all keep kind of topping the what can be done and how much can come from them. And it's just very cool to have these shows in the mix of the classics as well, because I think you can have an appreciation for both and you can see the good in both and the different routes you can take. And as Keenan and Rachel are mentioning, with kids growing up singing the songs, they're not feeling like, oh, well, this is how it has to go. It fits in this little box. I feel like Hamilton and some of these other shows are saying, no, you can really push your creativity and really, stretch to the limits of what you've already seen and try different things and see what works and see what doesn't. But it opens these new doors for everyone else growing up now on these songs on Disney Plus. Even just the introduction of being able to watch a Broadway show on Disney Plus for people that have never gotten to see a Broadway show, or for kids who maybe aren't ready for a Broadway show but would watch this, even if it's ends up being on in the background a little, whatever it is, it just opens doors in so many different ways. So I appreciate it for that.
Jen naming 2 musicals in between the producers and Hamilton to go, oh yeah, they had a pretty good during that time. But when I mentioned Spring Awakening before, and when that was like 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is it. This is the revolution of theater. This is and then I felt like things got very safe for a couple of years after that. And I saw a lot of musicals between Spring Awakening and Hamilton where the first act was good to pretty good, but the second act never followed through. And with Hamilton, I felt, again, I'm gonna say the first time in a while, and probably people can prove me otherwise, but you had a fully rounded musical. You had a complete world. It was built on history. It doesn't matter. We know there's plenty of jukebox musicals with full stories that you can tell, but the directorial concept, and now that you've seen it on Disney Plus, from the lighting to the choreography to the set design to the nuancey things that we've talked about, it's a fully supported. Everything about it makes sense, and I think that has, Broadway is a machine in some ways, and you got to kind of like put the javelin in the spokes of the wheels sometimes, and the whole thing to keep pushing in the direction of Hamlet rather than let's be safe. And I think in that time since Hamilton, I've seen more musicals that have a fully rounded beginning, middle, and end production design that's excellent. Dear Evan Hansen, and I just saw last week maybe Happy Ending, which won the Tony this year, and I was like, oh, that's a beginning, middle, and end. I'm so happy. Hadestown I mentioned, and they just feel complete. So I think from a theater sense, Hamilton has like pushed that back, and said, look, this is what we can do on stage. But the broad reach of Hamilton, that's where the legacy lies, the Disney Plus, the kids who are impacted, and how that will carry through, because, to me, at the end of the day, music and rhythm is universal. Just because Lin-Manuel Miranda does it one way, it prompts people like my daughter to go, what's this musical? What's that musical? And explore how other people are writing music and writing songs, and whether it's just standard music or musicals. And I still think that is also underrated right now, what Hamilton has done. You will see it in 10 years when all the kids now are adults, and how that and what that influence is. It's no different than how kids feel about the Star Wars prequels. The kids in their 20s, Star Wars prequels are my prequels, and I understand now. And it's gonna be like that in about 10-15 years, and I think that's gonna be a really exciting time as well. It was a cultural phenomenon then that is continuing to influence now, and you don't run across that too much at this level. And it's across many media platforms at this point, making that impact. And that's going to go on for a very long time, for decades, for generations. It's really, really important to have and seen.
I say so. I don't think we could follow that up with anything else. Everybody, thank you so much for coming on for our Hyperion Hamilton Extravaganza. It's really been an extravaganza. We've gone extremely long with it, but it's been so much fun hearing what your thoughts on the show, both personally and what you actually think of the show itself. So thank you very much for coming and joining us tonight.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Keenan Rachael. Keenan, are you still doing travel agent stuff? People can reach out to you to book their wonderful vacations, their Disney vacations, their Universal vacations, right? How can people get a hold of you?
Yep. Everything that is under my brand is Kingdom and Beyond. So kingdomandbeyond.com, and then all the social medias. The only one that's different is Twitter, which it's an N, the letter N, like rock and roller coaster instead of and. I'd like to do more with that. I've got a website that's got a lot of material on there, but hoping to do more with it. We'll see.
Yeah,
I'm always talking to her about trying to get stuff going up again. She's like, I don't know.
our Instagram might come alive again because we are headed down to Disney very soon.
We leave
so
Saturday.
I'm sure
Really?
we're totally out of the algorithm and everything now, but hey, if you're listening, look for us, and there's actually will be a little action on there in a couple days.
We still hope regularly that maybe part of our world might come into our world at some point. You never know. We just hope.
Never know.
Never say never.
Yeah, definitely book your vacations with Keenan for sure. Frank, Janet, it is a Theme Park Thursday. We need to hear from you. Where can everybody find your amazing show?
Hi, it's us. It's Dillo's Diz, Theme Park Thursday with Dillo's Diz. Every Thursday in your favorite podcatcher at Dillo's Diz. Dillo's with an S, Diz with a Z, on the TikTok, on the X Twitter, on the Instagram. We have the Facebook stuff. We have a YouTube channel. You can find us in all the places. DillosDizResorts.com will get you to a Patreon. You can join it for free. We don't care. And then find out how you can get the podcast that way every week. It's a nice little outlet to just be updated of when the podcast drops. So that's all of us. DillosDiz.com in the overall. But this was awesome. I love talking about this in general. I just love talking theater.
Well, we can't thank you all enough for you taking so much time out of your schedule, and your conversation was so engaging and enjoyable, and I know it's something that really is of interest to a lot of people. So you really we're really appreciative of that.
You guys are the best. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining us for our Hamilton Extravaganza.